It sucked! I made a mistake recently, and I resubscribed to World of Warcraft. I saw the news about the expansion coming out, Battle for Azeroth, and I kind of got caught up in the hype. I wanted to come back and see what the game looked like after a few years. I haven't played since Mists of Pandaria, but I've been playing on and off ever since the very beginning of the game, even technically before, because I played in the open beta as a dwarf mage, I remember. My first character was a level 60 paladin, and I'd like to call back to my experience of classic World of Warcraft to, I guess, warn people, or to remind those people who had experienced the game before that I don't think people are going to take to classic World of Warcraft the way some people think they will. We need to remember that World of Warcraft is 15 years old at this point. I discovered, this was unrelated to me resubscribing, but after I got back into the game, I discovered that there would be some demo servers up for BlizzCon, and that eventually, I think in 2019, classic World of Warcraft will be making a comeback, which is very interesting to me, and I think may very well be the first case of a HD remake of an MMORPG. But a 15-year-old game will show its age, just as I am. I am just turned 29 years old. That means I was 14 or 15 when I first started playing the World of Warcraft. And I think some of the reasons that people will perhaps hate Classic as much as I do, while I remember it fondly, I think I hate it. I think I hated it because, first of all, the leveling takes too freaking long. I remember when I had time. I don't have time anymore. I'm 29 years old, and even though I'm not married, I don't have a family, I do have a job. So I have at most maybe 1 or 2 hours a day to sink into games, period. And if I'm playing World of Warcraft, that means that's pretty much the only thing that I'm playing. And it's a banner day if I can play it for 2 hours. And what's great playing modern World of Warcraft, and I guess we're in patch 8.1 or whatever, is that you can level pretty quickly. Actually, just before making dinner in the precious hour that I had after work, I was able to level up from 35 to 37 on my warrior. Go back in time 15 years, let's time walk back 15 years, and you can maybe level up 35 to 36 in what? Maybe like an evening? When all you do is play World of Warcraft for like 4 or 5 hours, as I could have done back in high school, back when I had no obligations, back when I could just come home at 3 o'clock and do whatever I wanted because I was a kid. Remember that World of Warcraft saw its biggest expansion and its biggest numbers from Classic all the way through Wrath of the Lich King. That was when I was about 15 to 20 years old, when I was still in school. And I didn't really have a job, you know, during the semesters. That means I had so much time that I could use to play World of Warcraft and still have other hobbies. I could still watch TV, I could still watch movies. But now, my leisure time means that I have to pit World of Warcraft against, you know, painting miniatures or reading a book. God forbid I actually learn something instead of whacking away at gnolls for an hour a day. And we also need to think about what happened when you got to the end game. I was a level 60 paladin. I was raiding Scholomance. I was going into Stratholme. I was raiding the Burrs, both L and U. Eventually, I joined a guild, and maybe once in a while, we could get it together enough to go into Molten Core on a Saturday evening. I think I played that paladin for a good 3 or 4 months at level 60. And I did not get a single tier 0.5. I'm not even talking tier 1. I barely rated back in the day. I had no aspirations to get tier 1. But tier 0.5, the blues, the best blues you could get at level 60. I think it was Lightforge. Maybe. I can't remember exactly. I did not get a single blue for my paladin after playing for months at the maximum level. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Maybe I just wasn't doing anything right. I thought I was okay. We did all right. We didn't wipe too often. But the gear, it just wouldn't drop. Because remember, bosses would only drop like, a couple pieces of gear. And if it dropped a priest spalders, and there wasn't even a priest in the group, well, I guess someone's got to make use of it. It's not going to be me, not as a paladin. So the gear was an issue. But now, the gear's great. I haven't gotten to the endgame content yet, but even in Wrath of the Lich King, getting gear was so fun. It was so cool. Even if the bosses didn't drop the items that you wanted, you could at least get the tokens. You could do the daily quests. You could build up currency and then buy the gear that you needed. I remember playing a druid. I got a druid to level 80 or whatever the Wrath max was. And I was able to gear out my druid. I even think I got 2 sets for my druid so that I could do, the 2 different specializations. I could heal and I could do DPS. But even the shaman that I rolled, the level 60 shaman that I played for a few months, I was able to at best get 2 tier 0.5 blues after raiding for those months. And they weren't even 40-man raids. That was 15-man raids. You think people could gear up fast that way back in the day? No, they could not. So time and gear. My time now is scarce, and 15 years ago, the gear was scarce. Now, the last warning I want to issue to those of you who will go and play Classic WoW when it releases next year, whenever it does, is I think you need to keep your expectations in check in terms of, I guess you could say, community. Now, you have to remember back in the year 2004, we actually had to look around for people, not via the looking for group or the looking for raid, I guess you could say technology that they've developed over the last few years, but you had to type in chat. You had to join a guild. You had to actually talk to people. Now, I do feel that that sense of community is lost in the current game. You join a dungeon group, and you're all kind of just walking together towards the end, but you're not really coordinating. Hopefully you've got a competent tank. I'm a warrior, and I still don't know how to tank. But hopefully your healer knows what they're doing. Hopefully your DPS can, get in a few hits now and then. And all together, you're not exactly coordinating, but you're just kind of running in the same direction and hoping you make it to the end. Whereas back then, you had to steal tanks from other guilds, you had to steal healers from other guilds, you had to hope to God that someone was actually reading the general chat in Stormwind or wherever you were looking for people. You actually had to coordinate your groups so that you could make it to the instance entrance. You don't got to do that anymore. It behooved you to enter a guild so that you had a much easier time of forming these parties, to do quests, to go into instances, to go into battlegrounds. And you made a lot of friends along the way. I did. I was a part of a couple guilds. One, when I first started out on my Alliance Human Paladin. We were the Angels of a Vengeance. And we were a merry band of warriors. We got into TeamSpeak. Remember TeamSpeak? There was no Discord back then. It was TeamSpeak. And you hope to God that someone was paying the like $5 a month so you could host more than 5 people in a server. I talked to a lot of people back then. I didn't really have a lot of friends at school, so I made internet friends who I never met in real life, but I spent a lot of time talking to on those TeamSpeak or Ventrilo servers. Even in Wrath of the Lich King, where I was in college, I had more friends. I had a very tight-knit group of friends, but I was the only one who played World of Warcraft. But I made a couple of internet friends who I unfortunately don't talk to anymore. But I had people that I could rely on to go out and form parties. And it was fun getting to know them and hearing the stories of, you know, of their life and where they lived. You don't really get that much now. And honestly, I need to warn you, when you look back with those nostalgic feelings to the times 15 years ago, you're probably not going to get that again, for one reason or another. First of all, the friends you had 15 years ago, unless you're extremely lucky, aren't going to be there. Your guilds from 2004, 2005 aren't coming back. And unless Classic holds, unless there's enough people to satisfy that demand and keep those servers full, I think people are going to have a hard time. Sorry. Someone just pulled up outside, and because of my paper-thin walls, I'm just hearing some J-pop as I'm talking about the nostalgic times of old. And so I want to warn everyone watching this video and thinking about playing Classic. If you played Classic before, remember how much it sucked. And if you're going to get into Classic because you have never experienced it, you've been warned. I've been Jay Contra. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and mahalo.